The production of this program is made possible thanks to the support of the following and viewers like you. According to the Centre for Addiction and Mental Health, Canada and the world are in the grips of a mental health crisis that ruins health, threatens lives, and hurts economies. Knowing the facts are the first steps to creating hope. Jason Morehouse of HiBoop agrees. Just look at the headlines on a daily basis about mental health. They're top of mind, he says. The challenge, Morehouse says, is how do you know what your own mental well-being is? Where do you go for a checkup? And then what? These are the questions he asked himself, for which he had trouble finding answers. He says there was a gap in available resources, so I decided to fill it. HiBoop is the website he created, a platform that consolidates standardized mental health tests and provides a comprehensive assessment. I invited Jason Morehouse of HiBoop to join me for a conversation that matters about the resources needed by anyone when facing a range of mental and emotional challenges. Jason, welcome.
Thank you, and thanks for having me.
My pleasure. This is a topic that many times people are a little shy to bring up. And yet it is, as I stated off the top, it's a huge problem. From your perspective, like, how significant is it within the general population, let's say here in Canada?
Well, it's global, but if you look at it's not even just our thesis, it's global data that sees it on an extremely high curve of individuals in crisis, and that's the problem. Is we wait till crisis to address something that could have been addressed before, and many of us don't have doctors, at least in BC or Canada, or just it's a global thing. So, yeah, normally you would go to the doctor and say, I am suffering. I think I'm suffering from whatever it is, depression, something like that. And you would get some form of singular treatment, which is clearly flawed.
Well, you might get some treatment from your GP.
Your GP is going to throw some pills at you.
But what resources do they have that are available to them? And so you're still in that same position, aren't you?
You are, and it's not the caregiver's fault. Your GP or whatever might be your therapist, and they have 12 minutes with you because of the capacity. Maybe 24 if you're lucky, to try to get to something that gets you back on a baseline. What we're doing is to accelerate that so that the practitioner, the GP, whatever it might be, has a full profile based on their science, which is the same piece of paper you're going to fill out to see if you qualify for generalized anxiety or something like that. So we're just making it easier for those care providers.
You had personal reasons for wanting to do this. What was your journey that led you to say, hang on a second, I need some assistance, and the assistance that I need isn't here?
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, like I've always known there was like something, like whatever, when you're kind of not
not firing on all cylinders.
Yeah. Or you don't fit in anywhere, kind of thing. So that's fine. Like I accepted that. I started a couple companies, which is very common based on my eventual diagnosis, because we just create our own worlds. And successfully had a company in Victoria to which I had exited and merged, and there was 100 people, now it's like 300 people. So, but in that time, the amount of, and even before it, like I would go to the walk-in clinic and I was like, I have like somatic anxiety. So it's literally in my nervous system. This is not butterflies or stress. I don't know. But again, it'd be like a 12-minute session. So when I finally got to a point of actually seeking help, because I was concerned not just about myself, but the people around me and my employees. My walls are shrinking, and I can't figure out why. So I had sought out treatment. It was expensive, and I was in the position to do it, but most of us aren't. To get those more holistic diagnosis. So the diagnosis or the assessment, we do the assessments, not the diagnosis. It's not just a BC or Canadian thing, is it statistically it takes 11 years from the first symptom, and by that 11 years, it's an American study, but you start to pick up other mental health issues. It could be substance use, coping, personality disorders, obviously increased anxiety, depression. So 11 years, I mean, if you keep going, there's suicide rates, all of those things. 11 years is way too long.
The production of this program is made possible thanks to the support of the following and viewers like you. My understanding that when you start to experience mental health challenges, of course, your brain is rewiring itself to follow beliefs, patterns, or a variety of other things that now start to become entrenched. So
Right.
It's important that you get to addressing and understanding what's happening to you, so that you can then help to rewire your brain differently. Do I have that right?
Yeah, I'm not a doctor, but
Yeah.
So obviously our team has done a lot of research. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a fair statement. But at the end of for some individual in your life that is struggling, the sequence in which our professionals, doctors, all that kind of stuff, treat things is very much a singular approach. So, we're in Vancouver, you look at Hastings or Victoria, Pandora. So if you pick addictions, we're funding as best we can, but we're not dealing with the other part. And that's the same for eating disorders, deep depression, postpartum. Like, all of those things are interlocked. So what we are doing with their science and our algorithm, our product, is to connect that constellation so that that person at least has awareness. Because we have to self-advocate most of the time, which is what I did.
Self-advocate.
Yeah.
So to somebody who's unaware of that, what does that mean?
We often have to, if we have the capacity and energy to know something is wrong, and then everybody's out on, Dr. Google or something trying to figure out what's going on, they misdiagnose themselves, and there's a lot of that. So it's a lot of these disorders are indicators of something else going on. So anxiety, again, not a doctor, anxiety, depression, there's things you're born with, neurodivergency, all those kind of things. We know that statistically, there is always a root cause. Trauma is a big one. I'm sure if you're bipolar, you're going to inherit some things. But we don't treat that. We don't assess for it. And that's the 11 years. The 11 years is starting with the indicator symptom of, I can't understand why this anxiety is now so debilitating. I just thought I was shy. And I'm talking about myself. So when I took the time and effort, which was a great experience, and very expensive. Yeah, they were like, you have ADHD. I'm like, I know those kids. I don't have ADHD. And you have a complex PTSD and generalized anxiety disorder. That took 45 years. I was in school. They were like, you're dyslexic or something. And I just don't understand why it takes so long.
Well, part of what you said is there's a gap in resources and assessment tools. That's a big part of it, isn't it?
Correct. So that's what we're doing.
So how did you go about putting this together?
So after I left, I'm still on the board and stuff, my last company. I had, made a lot of progress. And but there was this thing which was, this is just unfair. I see it around me. I see it with my own kids, family, just this complete void of actually doing the right thing in the right sequence to so I just had the idea, and then I was like, I'm going to start this. I don't know what it's going to be, but here we are. Like, we're starting our first pilot next week.
The production of this program is made possible thanks to the support of the following and viewers like you. Well, you just touched on a very important point, the right thing in the right sequence.
Yeah.
Because you were earlier talking about people will go to Dr. Google and they'll go, okay, I'll type in something, and they'll read information. They don't know whether or not that's the right starting point. They don't know whether or not what they're reading there is an appropriate next step. And so what were the resources that you brought together so that now when somebody goes to HiBoop, they will get led down a path that says this is where you need to start and the order that you have to go in?
Yeah, it's it's up to the care provider to figure out the order, but what we do is identify the kind of like a baseball card. Here's where I am today, or solar system. Here's where I am today, so let's deal with the thing that is impacting whatever, your job or your relationships. Let's start with that.
So is this a testing tool that's online, or are you submitting information that's then going to be reviewed?
We are using 90 years of science through the DSM and other modules that are basically used around the world. And we are connecting the dots. So if somebody has insomnia, let's say, right? You probably might get some sleeping pills, but that is a somatic response to something else that's going on. I mean, I'm not an expert on insomnia, although I get it sometimes. What we do here is to connect the dots in all of these kind of questionnaires that you get at the walk-in clinic or even at the hospital, and say this associates with this and this associates with that. And what we're trying to do is to give the care provider a full preliminary assessment of who is about to arrive in about 5 minutes. So it's not a personality quiz, it's using their own science and making that more efficient. We can't change the capacity problem, but if Jason's going into the walk-in clinic 5 times a month or something, what we can do is to start to build a better referral system. So like most GPs don't deal with trauma. They have 2 hours of training in their education. I think that's changing, but a lot of them don't understand neurodivergency or this and that. And it's not like they're used to fixing bones.
Right.
So
when a user, though, goes to the website,
yes,
and they start to interact with these assessment tools, is it going to be a question with multiple choice answers, or
yes,
are they going to be writing information and submitting it?
We're using the standard tests. So we start with a framework test, which is to start to figure out, and we use kind of age, region,
Yeah.
and so forth. Nobody's going to do 600 tests. Like, it's just not. Well, you could. It's its own diagnosis, I suppose. But so it is to get to the root of the things as quickly as possible, and it is that consolation. It's just connecting the dots. You think you have depression, or your partner thinks you have depression. Let's follow up what that is. All of these things are similar questions.
So is there a general assessment, or if you say, okay, I think I've got depression, am I going to go to a specific page within the site that's going to narrow it down? Or do you have to start with a broader view and then start to narrow down towards, let's say, depression?
We start with a general assessment.
Yeah.
And then that leads our product and our algorithm, whether it's on the individual's phone or whatever it might be, to areas they don't know what they're answering, but we're trying to kind of have a litmus test on something, and it's like, okay, let's not spend so much time there. Let's focus based on what we think might. So if you have ADHD, it's a pretty standard test. By the way, none of those
You
tests
didn't
are
make
perfect.
up those tests. I mean, these are tests that are standardized.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, they're imperfect, but it's
Yeah.
what we have. Like,
Yeah.
it's not like a blood test for vitamin B deficiency or something. So what we do is start to get to a point where we're confident to present the more holistic picture of what's going on, and then we continue to follow up over time, which is really not done, sadly. If you have singular PTSD and you have nightmares every night, and you're prescribed, cognitive processing therapy and maybe some medication or whatever it is. Okay, so 6 months later, are you still having nightmares every night? Lots of first responders. That's where we can, I think, make a difference and report that back to the care provider.
The production of this program is made possible thanks to the support of the following and viewers like you. So then what is the interaction between the user and the care providers that comes through the site? Like, how does that work? Because I'm sure that a lot of people are going, okay, so I take the test and I get this result, now what? And how's that going to then lead me to resources that are going to help me address the challenges that I'm facing?
Yeah, I mean, at this point in time, I know there's a lot more that we plan to do, but the initial part is to cut out. Let's say somebody goes into a treatment center, and somebody's paying $500 a day, or sometimes $1,000, and they only have 6 weeks, so they have 9 weeks. That first 2 weeks, and this is again from a lot of the research we've done and a lot of the supporting clinics around us. That first there's a portion, let's say it's addictions, of stabilizing, and then there's assessment. But what we can get a head start on is to make that 6 weeks much more kind of empowering to the individual.
And so then the individual can take this information and go to a healthcare provider that's going to help them address their specific issues. So this is really helping you identify what your current state is and where you are probably going to need assistance.
Yeah, so it's inversed right now. It's the care provider sending the individual saying, you're arriving. We know that you're arriving in 3 days. That's your next appointment, and you're concerned about X. In the perfect scenario, then they start the assessment. So again, 5 minutes before they arrive, the practitioner or whatever it might be already has the same assessment that they would do anyway, but they don't have the time to link all that up.
Wow. So it's a valuable tool for both the healthcare provider and for the individual.
And the individual can take that. I mean, it's opt-in, so they have to accept it. And even if they move into something else, like a different region or a different care provider, they get to take their progress and their data and move it to somebody else to say, here's where I started 4 years ago. Here's where I am now, but I'm still, this thing is either still impactful to me. Like, nobody likes labels. I think that's part of it. But the labels give us access to help.
Mm-hmm.
Like, nobody wants to have like a Boy Scout badge where they're like, I have PTSD and ADHD and generalized anxiety disorder, but you do get access to funding, or whether it could be substance use disorder or any of those things. Nobody wants the labels, but the labels give us the ability to both reflect, especially when in your 40s, you know, there's a little bit of grieving there, which is like, okay, that all makes sense. But those labels just give us access.
But they also give us a very real sense of what the state of our own well-being is.
Yes.
What's the greatest benefit of being able to say, okay, now I have a much clearer sense of why I'm in the state that I'm in and the way that I'm reacting to certain stimulus in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're accelerating the rate at which somebody gets to that point, what's the payoff for them?
Less shame, less
shame.
Because you're looking at the world and everybody else has their stuff together, and for some reason you were struggling with that. Maybe it's, you know, just surface based, but when people understand what's going on, their self-acceptance, maybe not the other people around them, increases, because it could be their fault. Like, we're all responsible for whatever actions we take, but some of these things are just there. And you know, the rates of suicide, the rates of depression are all about, why can't I fit into this world the way that, whatever, my sister can? Or so the beginning part is just acceptance. I mean, it's a long journey depending on, you know, what it might be. It is just to say, okay, well, I'm unique. Everybody's unique, but and now I know where to start. Hopefully not when you're 40, but early on.
Well, I think that having that insight that gives you a sense of where you're at is vitally important.
Mm-hmm.
It is the thing that allows you now to say, okay, I can make decisions that will hopefully move me in a direction to a greater sense of self, greater acceptance, greater peace in life. I think it's a great tool that you put together, and I wish you great success. And of course, for anybody who wants to access the site, we're going to put it on the screen here for them to be able to find it. Thank you very much.
Click that subscribe.
Yeah. Thank you very much for coming in and sharing this with us.